Well, let me just begin by saying it's an honor to be here. And I see so many familiar faces. I feel like I'm already amongst friends, and by the end of the night, we'll all be friends. And I really appreciate that you would take the time to come be a part of this evening. And Suzanne, where is Suzanne? Suzanne, I appreciated your kind words. And as Suzanne shared a little bit about our relationship and our background, and tonight I'm going to share with you a little bit of my story. I want you to know tonight's not about me. Tonight is not about me. Tonight is about you and about your story. And I'm hoping that through the things I share tonight, I can encourage you and maybe even inspire you a bit in your journey and your story. Two ways to make the most of tonight, just before we jump into things. The first way, really simple, just put your life on hold. Suspend reality and step into this space and disengage from everything else and be fully present right here for the next 75 to 90 minutes. And if you do that, I think you may find you have some self-discoveries this evening about yourself and how you've lived and how you may want to live. The second way to make the most of this evening is be ready to write something down. If you have your phone, you may want to keep it out so you can take a note or two. Or if you have one of the notepads that we had available, be ready to write something down, as I can guarantee you that I'm going to say something that's going to be of value to you. Not saying everything's going to be of value, but there's going to be something that's going to be of value that's going to be worth capturing. And in fact, there's likely going to be one of two things tonight that will be worth recording and worth writing down. Hopefully there'll be a whoa and a wow. A whoa and a wow. Now let me tell you what the whoa is. The whoa is whoa. That just hit me. That spoke to me in some way. I need to apply that. That challenged me in some way. That inspired me some way. So tonight, be looking out for one whoa. Is there something that you walk away and say, oh, I've got to think about that more? And then a second is a wow, within 1 week. Wow, W-O-W, within 1 week. Is there something that you need to do or take action on? Because studies show we forget 90% of what we hear within 24 hours of hearing it. And if that's the case, it's going to be worth writing down that wow so that you remember to apply it. I love this quote. It's the law of diminishing intent. The longer you put off doing something that you should do now, the greater the odds that you'll never do it. Let me say that again. The longer you put off doing something you know you should do now, the greater the odds you'll never get around to doing it. So what tonight are you going to walk away with that you say, that's my wow, that's within 1 week. I need to take action on it. Maybe tonight, maybe tomorrow, sometime this week. And I trust that there'll be at least one wow and at least one whoa as we go through this evening. Well, let's get a little more acquainted. I know some of you I know quite well. And some of you know me, but not everyone. And so you've probably heard my name is Mano. And that's usually a stumbling block when I start a conversation with someone, when I meet them for the first time. And maybe for those of you who didn't know me and you were invited by a friend or dragged here by a friend to come hear me speak, when you heard my name, Mano, you probably thought the same thing that nearly everyone I ever meet thinks. What were his parents thinking? Because what commonly happens is people meet me, and first of all, they're confused. So I say Mano, and they either repeat it as Mario or Mona. I mean, they twist it a lot of different ways. But usually, people just kind of give me that quizzical look, like, did I hear you correctly? And then sometimes, and it used to happen when I say it used to happen a lot when I was young and a teenager, but interestingly enough, even in business circles now, I'll meet someone and they'll say to me, Mano, like the disease? And it's always been a little awkward how to respond. And it's sometimes made me hesitant to even introduce myself because what do you say? I haven't come up with a great comment or rebuttal to that. And so what I very quickly do is I start trying to explain myself. Well, it's mono, but it's not spelled M-O-N-O. It's not like mononucleosis. No, it's mano, M-A-N-O. But in India, they pronounce A's as soft U's, so it's actually mono. But no one can really say mono in Canada, so they just pronounce it mono, and everyone calls me mono. And people then look even more confused than they were originally. So sometimes I've even thought at times, maybe I should just introduce myself by my middle name, James. So I had an Indian name, Mano, short for Manohar, and then my middle name, James. And that's what my dad goes by. So his Indian name is Chittaranjan. But he says, my name's Chittaranjan. You can call me Dave. And so I've often thought that would help me out a great deal. And actually, when I was in high school, my friends started calling me Chittaranjan. They thought it was hilarious. When they heard that my dad's name was Chittaranjan, that became my nickname. But it didn't stop there. It kind of there was a progression over the course of my high school career, as there often is in high school. It started out as Chittaranjan. Then it became Chitter. Then it became Little Chitter. And it went downhill from there. I won't tell you what it went to next after Little Chitter, but just rhyme it and you'll know. And so my name has always been a little bit of a contentious point when I've met people. I've come to realize it's a great benefit. People remember my name. I meet a lot of people who can't remember the name Mano. People are like, that's weird, and then it sticks, and weird things stick. But the other thing that was kind of a stumbling block or a challenge for me, a little self-disclosure, when I was growing up, I had a speech impediment. And so in addition to being self-conscious about my name, I was also self-conscious of the way I sounded. And there were two letters that I often share when I speak at schools. I talk about my speech impediment and how it kind of shaped my life. But there are two letters that I had trouble enunciating. One was the letter S. In fact, you can probably still hear it to some degree, but I couldn't make this sweet sound of S. All of you try that? Yeah, and when I tried to make that sound, it sounded more like this. Shh. And I don't know why, that's just the way my mouth made the sound. And the other letter that I had a difficult time with was the letter R. I couldn't growl and say, R. All of you do that? R. Now you're just showing off. Because when I tried to do that, I don't know why, but my mouth just made the sound, oh. And, hey, don't laugh at me. No, but that's the way it sounded, and people used to laugh all the time, and that just made me more self-conscious. And so it's bewildering to me that all these years later, I ended up becoming a speaker, an inspirational speaker, and traveling to schools and speaking to students and camps, conferences, clinics, because for many years I used to be so self-conscious about even just meeting somebody or speaking in front of people. And so that's a little bit about myself, and I certainly wish I could get to know what you're self-conscious of, then would be on an even plane. But I'm excited to be here tonight to share with you the choices and the habits and the relationships and the beliefs that have shaped my life. And I've spent quite a bit of time thinking about this, and it might be helpful to just pause there even before I jump into that. And let me just tell you, when I finished high school and I came here to the University of Waterloo, I'll just finish my story in terms of my background. I wanted to just mention to you that Suzanne mentioned I came and studied here and played basketball at the University of Waterloo. There's one additional piece I wanted to mention. When I first came, my very first week of school, I had a roommate who was playing on the basketball team as well. His name was Mike. And I said to Mike, I said, I'm going to concentrate on basketball over these next 5 years. In fact, I'm not going to date a girl for the next 5 years. And he was just shocked. And I said, no, I'm really focused. I didn't date a girl in my last 2 years of high school, and I'm just on a mission to reach my goals. And then 2 nights later, he saw me talking to this young lady when we were all out together as a group. And I came home that evening, and he said, so what was going on? I saw you talking to that girl. And I said, I take back everything I said. I think I found a girl I might marry. And he kind of laughed, and we went to sleep. And 4 years later, before my last year of university, I married her. And so she's here with my lovely wife, Caden, our 3 children, Isaac, Zachary, and Anna. They're now 13, 11, and 9. So just thought I'd share with you. Some of you know my family, but that's a little bit more in terms of my story. But what got me thinking about the choices, habits, relationships, and beliefs that have shaped my life was thinking about my role as a dad. Having 3 young kids, something that's been on my mind for many years is, what are the most important things for me to teach my kids? As a parent, it seems when you're going through the diaper and no sleep phase, it seems like it goes on forever. But once they get out of that, and my son Isaac turned 13 this year, suddenly realized, oh my goodness, I've only got 5 years left and he's off to university, or maybe even a touch sooner. And with that being said, it's been really on my mind, especially the last year or two, what do I need to teach them? What do they need to know in these remaining years as they grow up? And with that thought, as I was preparing for coming in and speaking to you, and I speak a lot, and I speak to our staff, and we have a staff conference each year that we put on in June, and this year in June we'll bring together about 300 of our staff and closest family in our PGC community with the programs that we run. And I was thinking about that talk as well, and I thought, I think what I'd like to share, if I only had one opportunity to share with a group of people, what would I want to tell them? And as I was thinking about that, I thought, well, one of the things I've concluded with my own kids is success in life, I think, essentially comes down to the choices you make, the habits that you have, the relationships that you develop, and the beliefs that lead you. And so with that being said, I thought that would be a suitable topic for tonight, and for me to just share with you and kind of open up my life a little bit to you. This talk's going to be a little different than nearly any talk I do, because especially knowing so many of you, I want to just share with you at first some of the challenges or some of the things that I would have done differently if I could have done my university, specifically my athletic career, over again, and then specifically a few of the choices, beliefs, and habits that have shaped my life. So let's get going, and I want to start with things I'd do differently. How many of you are a competing athlete right now, either varsity and university, high school? So maybe about a third of the room. How many of you were competing at a high level or competitive athlete at one point in time? Okay, well, here is 3 things I'd do differently based on what I know now. And of course, hindsight's always 20/20, and I continue to work with elite level athletes, so I continue to learn, and the more I learn, the more I realize, wow, I would have done that a little differently too. But I love what John Maxwell says, leadership guru and author. He says there's no losses in life unless you let it be a loss. So I don't think of this necessarily as these things as mistakes, but they're things I would have done differently with what I know now. He says sometimes you win, sometimes you not lose, sometimes you win, sometimes you learn. And so some of my learning came after my career, so some of you can benefit from my learning as I share these couple things with you. So the first, I wish I would have gotten off the surfboard sooner. I wish I would have gotten off the surfboard sooner. And what do I mean by that? As a university athlete, I spent my first few years riding the waves. I rode the waves. I rode the highs and the lows. I had a good practice. I felt great. I had a bad practice. I was miserable. We had a great game and we won. I felt great. We had a bad loss. I felt terrible. And I rode this wave of how I played and how the team played and what coach was thinking about me and how things were going with my teammates. And that wave, I don't know if there's any bigger highs and any bigger lows than competitive sports, because you pour yourself into it. You're so invested into it that you live in that moment, and many of you know that. And it's a funny thing to be when you're in it. That's all that matters. In that moment, when you're competing, when you're training, there's nothing else in your world that matters, and that's it. And that's the way it should be. You're fully focused, you're fully present, you're fully engaged. But then to be able to step back when you're outside of that moment and say there's a lot bigger things in life. And this isn't the end, how I'm playing right now. I had a really difficult time doing that. And so I rode these huge highs and huge lows the first 2 years of my university basketball career. And the two things I wish I would have known then that I know now is, one, the improvement graph. The improvement graph. I often draw a graph that shows improvement, and for most of my career I thought improvement looked like a straight line. I thought I would just keep getting better and better and better. And one of the things that caused me to ride the waves of having down points and points where I felt discouraged or even felt like quitting was because I felt like I was getting worse, not better. Have you ever felt like you were getting worse, not better at something? Probably most of you have. And so when I would feel that way over consecutive days, consecutive weeks, in fact, I hit a point where it was over consecutive months, I started to think, I'm not improving, I'm getting worse, maybe I should just give up now. And what I didn't understand was the improvement graph, and that is very simply, improvement rarely looks like a straight line. It rarely looks like a straight line. You'll hit a spike, and then you'll plateau, and sometimes you'll even dip before the next spike. And no, I didn't know that. No one had ever told me that before. And so I was going through these waves of how I felt, and I didn't understand improvement rarely looks like a straight line. And I wish I would have known that, and I wish I would have applied it sooner. The second was I wish I would have took the long view. I wish I would have taken the long view. The long view being, it's not a sprint, it's a marathon when you're training, when you have goals. And you want to do everything you can in any given day. But what I realized was, this too shall pass. This injury that set me back, this too shall pass. This shooting slump that I'm in, this team slump that we're in, this too shall pass. And if I had just taken the long view and reminded myself, I'm going to be playing this game for a few years, it's very difficult not to. When you're fully present and immersed and engaged and you're pouring your blood, sweat, and tears into something, it's tough not to live in that moment and to be able to step back and be objective and say, this too shall pass. I'll make it through this and there will be better days ahead. But I learned to do that at the tail end of my career. And what I found was my satisfaction and my enjoyment of my career went up. And I was able to utilize that in everything else, in my business career, in my speaking career, in my family life. I'm able to remind myself, now, this too shall pass. Our kids will sleep through the night at some point in time. This too shall pass. And so it's been really helpful for me to take a longer view, and it's allowed me to not go too high on the highs and not too low on the lows. Second piece that I do differently now, to those of you who are still training as athletes, spend a lot more time on the mental side of things. I spend so much of my time focusing on the physical and not a lot of time focusing on the beliefs and the thoughts I was having and how that was influencing my performance. And there's so many good materials out there now online that you can access, some are even free, that if you're a competitive athlete, I would highly recommend investing up to a quarter of your time, so that might be an hour every couple days, into your mental approach, because it can make a huge difference. And I'm only now in the last few years realizing the impact of that. And the third, what I do differently, better competition. Better competition. Let me share with you what I mean by that. When I came in at the University of Waterloo, I was one of the youngest guys and one of the weaker players. By the time I left, I was one of the strongest players. And the one thing you need to continue to improve, and you'll hear this a little later on from me, you need to be with people who are better. You need to compete against those who are better than you, who are stronger than you, who are bigger than you, who are faster than you. And you need to get around those people. And during the summer, I had that for my first few years. In my last 2 summers, when I was preparing to train for the Olympic team, I trained with people who were learning from me, and I didn't have anyone I was learning from. And I wish I would have driven an hour if I needed to go find that pro player who was coming home in the summer, or find that university athlete in scholarship in the U.S. or somebody else who was beyond my level that I could train with. So those are 3 things that if I could do it all over again, I would do a little differently, and hopefully they can add value to you. All right, the choices I made in my life. This one's one I continue to learn and implement, but it's only in looking back on it It wasn't a conscious decision that one day I chose. It progressed over time, and now it is a very conscious decision, but you can be way ahead of me. Especially for those of you who are still in university or even high school. And that's, I chose to be intentional about my growth. I chose to be intentional with growth. And I don't just mean in terms of athletics. I mean generally, in growing as a person, I chose to be intentional. How do you change your future? How do you change your future to have a brighter future tomorrow than you have today? You change what you do today. Today matters. What you do today, the habits, the things that you do today are what change your future tomorrow. I learned that as an athlete, and I've continued to learn that throughout my life. And what I've come to realize is, how many of you are familiar with the concept of compound interest? Familiar with the concept? Multiplies over time. It builds over time. Well, the compound interest of time, I experienced it through my career. What daily training, going to the gym once a week and trying to just go hard once a week, that might lead to some benefit, but transformation comes from what you do every single day as an athlete, as a student. But what I've realized since my time as a competitive athlete is as a person. And so I've become very intentional to actually put together a growth plan in my life. I'd be curious to know how many of you have an intentional growth plan that if I gave you a piece of paper right now and said, write down your daily growth plan to have a brighter future tomorrow, I'd be curious to know how many of you could put to paper a growth plan that says, here's what I'm doing today to lead to a more promising future tomorrow. I've become really intentional to pursue growth. Let me tell you the three things that'll do. I think these are the only three things, or at least the primary three things, that'll determine whether you'll be different in the future from who you are right now. Number one, the people you spend your time with. Number two, the experiences that you have. And number three, the books that you read. Or for that matter, whatever you may read. So let me just jump into those and spend a few moments on each one. I'm going to give you an exercise or two in a moment as well. First one, the people you spend your time with. Interesting study out of Harvard University. You become most like the 5 people you spend the most time with. They've done some studies in terms of income levels. And the 5 people you spend the most time with, what they make is what you'll make over a period of time. And so if you want to make really little in your career, let those 5 people in your innermost circle be people who make really little in their careers. If you want to make a lot of money in your career, then spend a lot of time with people who know how to make a lot of money, and you'll probably learn how to make a lot of money. The same can be said with athletics. If you want to become great in your sport, who's in your inner circle? It goes back to what I shared earlier. Who are the 5 people that you're spending time with? Are they better than you? Are they bigger than you? I've made a commitment to be intentional with my inner circle. And one of the things that's helped me is being intentional to develop mentors. I've got 5 or 6 mentors in different aspects of my life that are bigger than me. And what I mean by bigger than me is they're farther in their journey. They're bigger in how they think, their wisdom. They're bigger in their character and their consistency. They're bigger in what they know. And as a result, I want to be like them, and so I try and spend as much time with them as I can. Do you have people who are bigger than you? And that's great if you have people. I think there's 3 types of people we want to spend time with. There's people that you can learn from. There's people that you can be peers with and do life with. And there's people that can learn from you. And hopefully you can have people in all 3 of those categories. And I think they all help our growth. But I've had times where I haven't had people that were learning from me, and I've realized I've got to give back. I need to find people that I can build into and help to teach. That'll benefit them, and it'll benefit me as well. I also need to be intentional about my peer relationships. In fact, my wife and I sat down a few years ago, and we said, all right, let's write down a list of all of our friends. Who do we want to be intentional about spending time with? Because you might have 500 friends on Facebook, but you can only really develop a close friendship with a few. And so we got really intentional with who we wanted to spend our time with. And then finally got really intentional with who do I want to learn from. And what I realized was, well, I need to go in pursuit of people I can learn from. And I only had one or two, and I realized I need somebody to help me learn more about business. I need to learn about becoming a better parent, or how to have a great marriage relationship. And so I started seeking out people and started looking for people. And some people I didn't even know, I reached out cold to and said, hey, any chance we could get together for lunch or get together for breakfast, or through a friend of a friend I connected with someone. And I now have an inner circle that I consider a part. They're my team. I've got my business team that I go to that are my advisors. I've got my relationship team and my spiritual team that I go to. My question is, who's in your inner circle? Who's in your inner circle that's helping to guide you and even guard you? I often say one of the things that keeps me from going off the rails in any different direction in life, because I can go sideways quickly. I don't know about you, but I can go sideways quickly. But the people who are around me, meaning my peers, help to keep me going in the right direction. My mentors keep me inspired to go in that direction. And those that are learning from me, I know I'm a role model, and I know I'm accountable to them. And so that keeps me going in that direction. So it protects me from myself by having these people in my life as well. Here's what I want you to do. Either on your phone, or you can just think about it, or in your notepad, just write down, who would you consider, well, not who would you consider, who are those 5 in your inner circle right now? And maybe they're not positive influences. Maybe you might realize at the end, I'd put stars behind the people that, yes, I definitely need to be, I want them to continue to be in my inner circle. But I'm going to give you 30 seconds right now to just list or think about who's in your inner circle. Go ahead.